Hello, everyone. Luciano Oliveira, Oliveira Lawyers. Today is Wednesday, 12:30 Rio de Janeiro time, September 11. And I'm happy to see we have a few likes already. We are just getting started, and the likes are pouring in. I really appreciate it. The likes do help. It helps that our content reaches other people just like you. Let me take a look at our chat. We have a Paige M. Olá, Paige. Tudo bem com você? Glad to hear from Paige. Other people are joining as we speak. And a lot of feedback from our last live stream. We discussed about the NFL game in São Paulo. And yes, it looks like most of the people who attended the game, the NFL game in São Paulo from the United States, they said they had no problem at all attending the games. They didn't have their cell phones stolen, their wallets. They were just fine. That's the feedback we got from many of our clients who had friends attending this major event in São Paulo. Actually, there was the first time an NFL game happened in South America. Reminding you that football is not popular in Brazil at all. We don't even know the rules, how the game works. But Brazilians in general, they are very receptive. They are very appreciative of other cultures, particularly when it comes to sports. And I guarantee if there would be a couple of NFL games per year in Brazil, count on that. Football would suddenly become popular in Brazil as well. Of course, not nearly as popular as soccer, but still something that could be appreciated in Brazil. All right, let's talk about some of the other topics we received offline. We're still getting, an increased number of buyers for Brazil real estate. The Brazilian currency, the Brazilian real, is still in one of the lowest levels that we see in the last few years, which of course makes properties in Brazil even more attractive and easy to buy for foreign citizens. All right. Common question we receive over here is regarding finance. If foreign citizens can get finance in Brazil, if it is easy to get. It's not easy, and it is not impossible. Just talking about the main cup of challenges, one challenge is for the person to be seen as someone who's going to stay around to pay for the mortgage, and therefore it's much easier for people to get some type of loan once they become a resident at some capacity, right? Like a legal resident. So we're not talking about having an address in Brazil. We're talking about the person getting some type of visa or residency. So they convey the idea that they are going to be in Brazil for the longer term. So that's the first challenge. Sometimes people, they are at the beginning of their journey and they don't have the R&M card, and therefore banks are not going to see them as worthy applicants. Okay, that's the first challenge. The second challenge is for you to show income. And, even though some banks are now starting to review, for instance, a U.S. tax return as a way to prove income, usually traditional Brazilian banks, they are not really, capable or nimble enough to understand income from other countries. So particularly builders, developers, they are going to stick to the traditional ways of proving income in Brazil. And therefore, maybe a mortgage is not available for you once you start your journey in Brazil. But over time, there is a very good chance that you would be able to secure a loan. All right, that's another take on that. All right, let me see if we are getting any participation here in the chat so far. Only page. Guys, let me know. I can see there are other people. There are other people in the live stream. If you could, please let me know if you are able to text, if you are able to chat. I want to make sure that everybody is able to participate. Okay. Usually at this time we have a few more participations. I just want to make sure that our live stream is working as it should. All right, continuing on the property track. For those of you who consider the possibility of securing permanent residency in Brazil through the purchase of real estate, nowadays there are two different tracks. There is one track for you to apply while in Brazil, right? Like, so let's say you travel to Brazil just as a tourist, or if you are from the US or from the UK, like you could even travel under the waiver, meaning that you're not really traveling under a tourist waiver, a tourist visa, you're just traveling under a waiver. And once you are in Brazil, in theory, you could buy the property, apply for the residency, and get to the residency without leaving the country. Okay, so that's one of the very interesting routes nowadays. The more traditional one, which was actually the only one available in the past, would require you to first buy the property and then go back to your country of origin, get a visa through the consulate, and after this visa was approved, then to travel back to Brazil to then actually get the real estate investment residency, right? So nowadays we have both tracks. You can either first get the visa abroad if you are still in the process of moving to Brazil, or if you have moved already, then you can basically get everything accomplished without leaving the country. All right, Paige is asking, what is the process of bringing pets into Brazil? Is there a limit on how many you can bring? Paige, so, from the Brazilian law perspective, pets, they are almost like considered as things or merchandise. And, there is no limit as long as you are going through for the, importing process, right? Like, I mean, it's not just like some people, they think, they can simply get their pets into a plane and arrive in Brazil, and the pet would just follow with them. That's not how it works. Like when you're bringing a pet, there are, of course, several requirements in terms of verifying that your pet is up to date with the vaccination. There is paperwork to be completed about the pet entering the country. And unfortunately, this is somewhat constant in the Brazilian legal system, a lot of red tape and bureaucracy. So what we usually recommend, Paige, is for you to secure a broker, right? Like it's a customs broker specializing in pets. And there are several of them out there, okay, Paige? So do me a favor, try to find, pet, it could be, sometimes they don't use the technical language, customs broker, but, it could be like pet into Brazil consultant, right? Like if you want to search for something like this, like you can find some of these experts who are going to help you with the paperwork. If you don't find, let me know. Next time I can bring a referral for a person who works only with that. This person works exclusively with assisting people bring pets to Brazil. That's her only job, and he can tell you, it's a whole project to bring a pet into Brazil. Paige is also saying, I know they have to get the pet passport, health certificate, but my concern is how to get them there without taking a bunch of expensive flights. Yeah, I hear, Paige, and actually there were changes like after COVID, and unfortunately, the airlines became more restrictive, and usually it's very expensive. It's very expensive to bring a large dog into Brazil. I remember one of our clients. She had a large breed. I think it was a golden retriever, and she was going to stay in the northeast of Brazil. Like she would need to pay, I think, just like the first, like just the first leg from the United States to Sao Paulo. I think it would be something like $5,000 because it was a large pet. And then she would need to pay an additional $2,000 to have like ground transportation from Sao Paulo to the Northeast, because there are no airlines who are going to take a large breed as an adult golden retriever from Sao Paulo to the Northeast of the country. So yes, I would say there is no limit in terms of the number of pets, but the cost alone would certainly represent a constraint to how many pets you would probably want to bring, Paige. Now, for smaller breeds, I think it's very different. Sometimes you can even bring the pet in the cabin. And then, it does change the price structure dramatically, because for a small breed, then yes, there is a bunch, or, a couple, not a bunch, but a couple of airlines that could help you move the pet from Sao Paulo to other locations in the country. For those of you who don't know, most of the flights into Brazil, they come to Sao Paulo. After Sao Paulo, there are also, a number of flights, to Rio de Janeiro, Brasilia, Florianopolis. Fortaleza is becoming more common nowadays, but Sao Paulo remains like the number one destination of flights, not because Sao Paulo is super attractive as a tourist destination, but because Sao Paulo is the largest city in the country, and the infrastructure in Sao Paulo is the most advanced in the country, and therefore it does work as a major connection hub for flights arriving in Brazil. All right, we have MD Motorcycles. Welcome, MD. Good to see you over here. Hi, Luciano. I'm Mario. I've been learning a lot about Brazil and laws. Thank you. I'm glad to hear about that, MD. Keep the participations coming. It's always good to have fresh faces, if we can say so, here at the live stream. Paige says, I have 6 cats and a medium breed service dog, a border Aussie, but most airlines have a 1 pet per person per flight rule now. Should I just hire a private jet and bring them all at once? That would be a great idea, right, Paige? Just the cost would be, it would be quite high. But yes, I didn't know about the 1 pet per person regulation. And it kind of makes sense, right? So you would need to travel multiple times in theory to bring all your pets. Yeah, that's a tough call. Now, I think, Paige, that this is a rule for people traveling with their pets. Now, if you hire someone such as a pet customs broker, this person could, in theory, have your pets, sent in a single flight by themselves, but then it's a different price structure, and then it's a different service that is not going to require you to be in the same flight. All right, so there you go. There may be this a route that you could also entertain. Okay. All right, we have Sky Zero. Welcome, Sky. Visa will be mandatory for Canadians and Americans starting in March of 2025. Sky, so the next date, right, like the next date for the visa to become mandatory for Americans, Canadians, and Australians is actually April the 10th of 2025. We've been discussing about that, Sky. I'm not sure if you're following, the updates, but that's going to be actually the fourth time that President Lula is trying to get that in place, and he hasn't been able to do that for the prior three times. And if the past helps us explain the future, he's not going to be able to do so again. That would be the natural gas, and the reason for such failure is because the community at large, like the business people in Brazil, or the Brazilian Congress, they believe there is no need for Brazil to ask U.S. citizens, Canadians, and Australians to get a visa, because just naturally, like if you make a visa, a requirement, many people would probably, of course, not all of the prospective travelers, but some of the travelers, they would say, listen, I don't want to, take the time to fill out forms, to deal with a consulate. I would rather basically just travel to Mexico, right? I don't need a visa to Mexico. I don't need a visa, to the Caribbean. So why would I need to worry about a visa? If Brazil doesn't want my money, fine with me. Okay, so that's the understanding of most of the Brazilian Congress. So the Brazilian Congress is not really aligned with President Lula on that front, and that's why President Lula tried for three times to get the visa requirement in place, but that has not happened in the three prior attempts, and I would guess it's not going to happen in April of 2025. I just hope President Lula doesn't see my live stream. Otherwise, he's going to say, well, he said I'm not going to be able. Now I'm going to make it happen just because he said so. Of course, I'm just joking, but there you go. These are the facts. Like three times, there was a date for three times for the visa to be required, and the government had to kind of backpedal this thing for three times, and let's see what happens in April 10th of 2025, Sky Zero. All right, Page M says, I would think our tourism would actually help Brazil's economy because our spending there, so it would make more sense to keep things the way they are. Absolutely, Page. I am on the same track that you are, and I'm gonna explain a little bit about the other side, right? Like, so what would be a reason for Brazil to require a visa to U.S. citizens, right? One thing for sure is not because U.S. citizens are coming to live illegally in Brazil. I guarantee that's not the case, and everybody knows. The reason it's an international principle called reciprocity, and this principle says something like this: like a country is gonna kind of treat the other country the same way this other country is treating the first country, right? So, in other words, Brazil should ask the United States. Brazil should ask citizens from the United States to get a visa just because the United States is going to ask Brazilians for a visa when entering the United States. Okay, now the distinction, which is pretty easy for any of you to tell, I guarantee everybody's thinking the same thing, is, like there is a large number of Brazilians who are going to travel to the United States under the disguise of being a tourist, but they are actually immigrants who are going to stay in the country illegally, right? So that's why the United States does need to ask for a visa, and it does need to vet Brazilians to a large extent, just because The stats, they don't lie. There is a large number of Brazilians who travel to the United States and stay there even though they should not. Okay, so there is a reason for the United States to ask. Now, there is no such reason for Brazil to ask the visa. So Brazil says, I don't care. I don't care about the facts. If you're going to ask my national for a visa, I'm going to ask your national for a visa as well. That's the principle of reciprocity. And President Lula, he's very big in ideology, right? Like, I mean, he does have, some common sense policies. He does always fight hard for the poor. It could be a matter of opinion how successful he is or not. But I think nobody can deny that President Lula, he does have a history of fighting for the poor. And but this thing about the visa requirement is more something ideological and honestly not really grounded in facts and common sense, in my opinion. Okay, there is a lot of people, and even in our channel, every now and then someone is gonna chime in and say, yes, I agree, Brazil, should not bow to the United States and should ask for a visa because the United States also asks for a visa. So it's a matter of opinion. My opinion, I just hope that for the fourth time, President Lula is unable to implement the visa requirement. All right, so it looks like we are on the same page here. Ronnie Dio, welcome, Ronnie. Good to see you over here. Did you say last podcast that if a foreigner finances a house in Brazil through a international bank like Santander, that they can get a golden visa? Ronnie, so there are two possibilities here, okay, like international bank. So if you're telling me that the bank is going to make the money available abroad, the finance, the mortgage is not going to show up to the Brazilian government, right? Because you're still bringing the money from abroad. And the Brazilian government, the idea here is that the Brazilian government is giving you residency in exchange of the investment, right? And the investment means money coming from abroad. So yes, we do have lots of clients who are going to secure the funds in the United States, for instance, through a HELOC, right? They're getting a HELOC, which is a credit line based on a real estate property based in the US, or they're going to even get a second mortgage on a California property, let's say, and then they are going to just bring this money. And from the Brazilian government perspective, they don't care. It's new money. It's fresh money coming into the country. Now, if you're getting the finance through Santander, which is like an international bank, but Santander is making the money available in Brazil, then this is not going to work for the golden visa, because Brazil is going to say, you know what? I don't see the money coming from abroad. I just see a Brazilian bank. Even though Santander is an international bank, when Santander is operating in Brazil, it's just like any other Brazilian bank. So the Brazilian government is going to say, I don't see the money coming from abroad. All I see is a Brazilian bank making a mortgage available to you. Okay, so the distinction here, just focusing on Santander, right? Because that's your example. If Santander makes the money available in Brazil, not good, because you're not going to be able to apply for the golden visa. If Santander is making the funds available abroad, either in the US, in the UK, Asia, Santander is pretty much everywhere. But if the money is coming from abroad, again, the Brazilian government is not going to ask you, all right, where did you get the money? That's not the Brazilian government's concern. The concern is fresh money coming from abroad. And therefore, it does not matter which bank you are working on, or if it's either a finance or mortgage or a HELOC, or just funds that you have been saving. Brazil is going to be pretty fine as long as this money is coming from abroad. All right, Ronnie. And just to materialize this concept a bit further, one of the documents we're going to need to attach to include in your application package is going to be the paperwork for the currency exchange, showing exactly that the money came from abroad. Okay, so again, if the Santander Bank, if they're making the funds available in Brazil, there is no currency exchange contract, right? Like, I mean, they're just moving money around between branches or between, subsidiaries, but there's not going to be a currency exchange contract or paperwork on your name. That's one of the main requirements for the Golden Visa. All right, Ronnie, I hope that was helpful. Now, something interesting for you to note. Like if you're going to buy a property in Rio de Janeiro, the minimum requirement for you to apply for the Golden Visa is 1 million reais. But with 1 million reais, you can't really buy, you're not going to have many options in neighborhoods such as Leblon or Ipanema, right? And many other places like Lagoa or Gavia. There is a bunch of places in which 1 million reais is not going to work at all, right? So what you could do, Ronnie, is to get a finance even in Brazil for the excess money that you need to pay. So let's think about a 3 million reais, 3 million reais studio in Ipanema, right? Studio, 3 million reais in Ipanema. You would send 1 million reais from the United States, for instance, to Brazil. You would have the currency exchange contract for the 1 million reais, which would allow you to apply for the Golden Visa, and you would use 2 million reais finance from Santander in Brazil. Okay, because in this case, Brazil doesn't care. Brazil can see, because like the paperwork that we would present to the immigration would show it's a 3 million reais property. Currency exchange contract is just 1 million reais. So Brazilian immigration sees it, and they don't care because you are meeting the minimum requirement of 1 million reais. So the excess, it's up to you if you want to, finance in abroad or in Brazil. That's gonna be just fine. All right, Ronnie. I hope that was helpful. And by the way, just today, we got a client buying a property in Rio de Janeiro, an apartment in Rio de Janeiro, in Ipanema for 16 million reais. 16 million reais. That's a pretty large transaction, right? That's a pretty large transaction, a major exception here at the firm, right? Not surprisingly, most of the transactions, they are going to range between 1 to 5 million reais, but today we got a transaction for 16 million reais in Rio de Janeiro, right? So, the thing is, like, whenever we discuss about, these neighborhoods, particularly Leblon and Ipanema, like they have been built out entirely, right? So, they are highly desirable areas of Rio de Janeiro, and like demands usually just grows, but not like there is no additional offers. The Brazilian, the Rio de Janeiro City Hall, they make it very difficult for new permits to be obtained. And usually when you obtain a permit, is going to be to actually demolish something that was prior in the place to build a new building. Okay, and that's extremely rare. So there was another transaction we had. It was for 8 million reais. I'm not sure if it was Leblon or Ipanema. And it was a club, like, a leisure club, like with pools, with, sports and so on. And it looks like, as far as I remember, this club went bankrupt. And then there was like a pool of developers who bought the real estate, demolished everything, and then they built, I'm not sure if it was 2 or 3 towers. And the apartments, they were being sold like for 8 million reais a piece in those areas. All right, page M, do you guys have recommended websites for house listings we can check? Absolutely, Paige, absolutely. I'm going to write down a few of them over here. Let me do better, right? Like, I always like to share our resources just because this is stuff that we spent so many so much time, creating, and they do address what you asking for, and therefore I would rather share this resource. Okay, but basically we have a page in which we listed the main search engines. Okay, and then let me see where to buy real estate in Brazil. I'm gonna share this link with you, page. All right, so this is our website page. You just scroll down. Let me see what's the number of the section. It's section number 2, and then you're gonna find the main portals for you to search for properties in Brazil. In the second section of this page I just shared with you. All right, page. Let me know if you have any questions. They are in Portuguese. You probably know if you're using Chrome, you can right-click and use like the machine translation from Google. It's pretty decent. It's gonna let you know the basics about the property. Something very interesting, like I'm gonna tell you over here. In November, we're gonna be launching a new system or a new service, and it's actually not being provided by our law firm, but it's gonna be like a sister entity that is gonna do like a kind of concierge service to locate properties as per your requirements. So if you say, listen, I wanna get a property in Florianópolis, it should be like in the island, it should be, I don't know, near Praia dos Ingleses, or it should be near downtown, like a 2-bedroom. It doesn't need to be beachfront, but I don't wanna be like further than a couple of blocks from the beach. We're gonna provide with a short list, and we're gonna walk you through all of those properties. Okay, and there's not gonna be an upfront cost like these other separate entities, not our law firm, right? Like it's this separate entity. Basically, they are gonna participate in the seller's commission, and therefore you're not gonna be paying anything more than you would be paying anyhow, right? And these other entities is still like being compensated by the commission from the seller, and at the same time, like we're gonna be finding these properties for you and providing you with a short list. So that's a pretty a nice service. Like we've been trying to get this in place for a couple of years, and now the expectation is that we're gonna be launching this service in November, right? It's gonna be a separate entity, but we're gonna have some level of control over the service, meaning that to start with, you're not gonna be offered properties that should not be offered in the first place. Super common, all right? Super common to happen in Brazil. Still this week, I mean, just to give an example, like there was a couple of clients, like one, the husband, he's from the US, the wife, she's from Brazil, and they wanted to buy, a beach property, and this beach property was being sold by a French gentleman, but the French gentleman, he was 95 years old. And I'm not sure how it works, like if you are in another country, but in Brazil, it's almost impossible for you to safely buy, because if you think with me, someone who's 95 years old is not actually in a point of selling a property. It's more in a point of working on a succession plan, and therefore it's super easy for family members to dispute this transaction later on. And the couple was saying, well, but we spoke with the seller. The realtor said it was fine. It was just to get a letter from a physician stating that the gentleman was in a good state of mind, right? So this is a realtor who's pushing for a transaction that should never happen in the first place, because obviously, right? Like, I mean, this gentleman would be selling a property that could be easily disputed by the seller's family members, particularly children later on. So I said, listen, we're not going to take that transaction. The person said, no, we can pay you more. Like, we're going to pay you extra because we understand there's going to be more work involved. And I said, listen, the problem is not the work involved. The problem is the risk that later on someone is going to sue you. And then guess what? If someone sues you, you're going to say, well, I hired an attorney and here I am in a lawsuit, right? Like, of course, because you didn't listen to the attorney's advice on the first place, right? But all of that to explain that, you know, this sister entity, right? Like, they are going to, we're going to train them like in a way that they are not going to present problem-ridden properties in the first place, because I also understand, right? Like, I'm also a buyer, you know, sometimes a buyer for real estate. And once you see something, you like it, you like the location, you like it, you know, the design of the place. And most times, guess what? A problem, a property is going to be priced what? Below market average, right? And therefore, clients, they are going to be really attached, and they come to us, and it's almost like, you know, they see us as an obstacle. Like, they say, well, you know, these guys, they are not letting me buy this property. Like, so they want to shoot the messenger, right? So this is a problem when you go to the market and you do a shopping list, like you pick a few properties, and then you come to us. Sometimes you have bought this property in your head. Okay, so we feel like a realtor who's going to be really following some guidelines in terms of weeding out these hopeless properties. I think it's a big plus for prospective buyers. All right, okay. Paige says, I use Opera GX and it showed up in English for me. That's great sharing. Opera GX. I never heard about Opera GX. Is it like a new type of internet browser page? Very interesting. That's good sharing. Matthew Davis, welcome back, Matthew. I'm sure you've been here before. Matthew says, hey Luciano, I watched an older podcast of yours where you had a guest foreigner talking about becoming a real estate agent in Brazil. That's gonna be, let me see if I remember this name, James Rocks. All right, that's James Rocks. That he's from the UK. That was a good podcast. 2 questions. So here are Matthew's questions. 1, does studying the multiple months to become a real estate agent in Rio as a foreigner count for a student visa? No, Matthew, it does not. Okay, like, I mean, unfortunately, for you to qualify for a student visa, you're going to need to study in one of the more traditional programs, and these programs, they usually cost a little bit more because they structure their program in a way that's going to satisfy the government requirements for such a visa. Okay, traditionally, the programs for real estate agents in Brazil, and I know because we were discussing for this other entity, right, like, and preparing our personnel to be qualified, and they went through this training, is more fluid. Like, there is no minimum number of hours per week or per day. So it's not really well structured. And because of that, the real estate agent programs, unfortunately, they don't usually qualify for the student visa. All right. Now, remember, there is always the digital nomad visa. The digital nomad visa is very easy for people to qualify. We have clients sometimes, they don't, they are kind of in between careers or something, and they even form an entity. They say, you know what, like, I'm going to form an entity. I'm going to do, this new type of business. A worst case scenario, I get my digital nomad visa and I can stay in Brazil, right? So there is always a way for people to qualify for the digital nomad visa. Okay, that's something for you to consider, Matthew. Matthew's second question, once you receive the real estate license, what would be the red tape that needs to be taken care of as a foreigner to be able to stay without issues? All right, so I'm thinking more in terms of you running your business, right? I think that for you to get the license, Matthew, like, you should be at least a resident. Okay, so the digital nomad visa, it does give you the temporary residency, and I think there is, but the digital nomad visa doesn't allow you to work for something else. So that's a catch right there, Matthew. I never provided a consultation to someone who had a plan to work as a real estate, but I'm sure there are ways for you to accomplish that, right? Like it's just a matter of spending the time. Like if you want to schedule a consultation specifically for this purpose, then we can review the different types of visas and see what would be the best way for you to accomplish that. All right, Matthew. But I do like the idea. I can tell you something. It's very rare for us to find real estate agents that we would like to recommend to our clients. It's actually very, very rare, and people get frustrated. They think we are not, we don't want to be helpful because we don't have a referrals, right? And I think I did address such a matter in the past over here. Like in Brazil, it's a different type of dynamic, a different type of culture. The realtors commission, it's a lot of money for Brazilians, okay, to Brazilians. So when people are exposed to that type of upside, I would say they are unfortunately kind of fast to flexibilize, their morals, right? Like sometimes you're gonna see things that I don't like to see. And my problem in providing referrals is that if I provide you a referral and then this real estate agent pull a fast one on you, guess what? You're gonna come back to me and you're gonna say, listen, it's your fault. Like you gave me a bad apple, right? But the problem is not that I gave you a bad apple. It's just because of the dynamic of the Brazilian culture, right? And this is something difficult for people to get, okay? So to avoid this whole explanation and opening this can of worms, we just say, listen, we don't provide referrals. Now, if we are working with you on the golden visa and the legal part of it, then yes, we're going to provide with referrals, but then it's going to be a different story because when we provided the referral to the realtor, we said, listen, realtor, you go get some properties for this guy. And by the way, we're going to be making sure that everything is like crystal clear and there are no games being played, right? So they know we're going to be on top of them to make sure nothing weird happens. Now, if we just provide, like sometimes we have a consultation here at the firm and the person asks for a referral and we know this person is not going to hire us, we don't want to give you this referral because then this person is going to get the referral. They are going to try to do things on their own. Not surprisingly, very often this is not going to work. And again, guess who they are going to blame, right? They are paying a consultation, and because of a consultation, they want to put the whole blame on us. It did happen, right? Like I'm not just talking about possibilities. That happened in the past, so we don't want to be in that spot anymore. And that's why we don't provide referrals unless we are working with the client on the transaction. And that's why we are getting this other entity set up that's going to work with the same standards and criteria we do. And so even if you don't want to hire our service, now you're going to have an option to work with the real estate agent alone who's going to follow the same criteria that we follow. That's going to be the I think the value that they're going to bring to the table, okay? So it's almost like you get a type of service that we provide without dealing with a legal firm. And of course, you're not going to even be paying anything because, again, this other entity is going to be paid by the commission that's going to be built into the property price anyhow. All right, I hope that makes sense. The 552, you should do another live stream with Mark Sant. The first one was really good. I agree 100%. The 552, there were like 2 live streams with Mark. The first one was pretty solid. In the second one, we had issues with the live stream system, and I think we basically lost the content. But Mark and I, we are always exchanging messages, and that's a great idea, the 552. We should certainly get another live stream done with Mark Sant. That's for sure. He's very passionate about Brazil. He's also very knowledgeable about the cross-cultural issues, particularly because he does teach Portuguese to foreign citizens, and he has been doing that forever, right? So he has a whole different perspective, and I really like Mark's enthusiasm about the expat community in Brazil. Really, really good idea, the 552. All right, Matthew Davis says, great info, thanks. I'm from Canada. I'll be coming to Brazil next year for a few months. You'll be hearing from me for sure. That's good to know. So just compliment, like I told you about the downsides, right, Matthew? But I didn't tell you about the upsides. And I was not really trying to trash realtors in Brazil. I was just sharing a challenge we have here at the firm. And the reason why I was starting to say that is to tell you that, realtors who are from another country are in great demand, right? I'm going to give an example. Like in Salvador, I think we had 3 transactions with the same realtor, and she's from the U.S. And it's impressive. Like, a client is going to get her. When they find her, they are going to pick her for the transaction, and then they are going to pick us for the golden visa / due diligence and currency exchange, the escrow emulation that we do here at the firm, the title check and all the stuff that we do. And it's not by a coincidence. It's because she's probably the only U.S. citizen realtor in Salvador, and she is always in great demand. Okay, and you see, like James Rocks in Florianopolis. He's also known as the Gringo realtor, and you have this lady in Salvador. Her name was Kitty. Her second name was actually a Brazilian name. I don't recall her last name. I think she married with a Brazilian, but her first name is Kitty. I now remember Kitty Farias. Kitty Farias. That's her name. She's a realtor, a pretty good realtor in Salvador. And that's why I was trying to explain, like, if you come from another country, I think it does create a really nice differentiation for you, because then people are going to say, all right, Matthew, worst case scenario, he knows what a Canadian is looking for, how a Canadian thinks, how real estate works in Canada, and that's why I want to work with Matthew. All right, so there you go. That's a pretty good idea. All right, so let me see if we have any more participation, any other questions talking about real estate. In the last live stream, there was Moses. Moses does show up here every now and then. Moses was asking about the São Paulo market. São Paulo market is pretty consistent. São Paulo is a 20 million inhabitant city, and it's a huge city, right? Like, I mean, if you think about New York City with 9 million people, Brazil, I'm not sure if Brazil has 22 as of now, or 23 million people. Rio de Janeiro, like 8 to 9 million people. And so São Paulo, it's almost like a country by itself, right? It's almost like a country by itself. I do like São Paulo a lot. I usually tend to, invest in the São Paulo downtown area, but that's because I was actually born in the downtown area, and I also spent most of my 20s in the São Paulo downtown area, and I am attached to the area. Now, other people, they are gonna like, more like fancier neighborhoods in São Paulo. Fancier neighborhoods, they are distributed across the city, usually not that far from downtown, but certainly not in downtown. Curious enough, like São Paulo downtown is still a challenging place. It's a place in which you have a lot of people in a situation of homelessness, and it does create a cause. It does create a lot of trouble, like drug usage, like mental issues. So, for instance, Mark Sant, he doesn't like downtown. He says whenever he has gringos, he's not gonna take people to downtown. On the other hand, I have friends of mine who are from the U.S. I have a close friend of mine. His name is Max. Max, I forgot his last name, but he loves downtown, right? Like we met in downtown. He bought an apartment in São Paulo downtown with our help, because that's how he got the permanent residency, and he's a downtown guy as well. There are many others. We have another client of ours. She's a major immigration attorney in the U.S. And she bought, like, in a single shot, 2 apartments in São Paulo downtown, right? And she said, I want to buy in downtown. I don't want to buy anywhere else. So, São Paulo downtown is not for everyone, but those who like São Paulo downtown, they don't go anywhere else, okay? And by the way, that's where our office is located. Our office is located 2 blocks from Praça da Sé. And Praça da Sé, it's like what we call Mark Zero in the São Paulo whole state. That's where most of the highways that cross the entire state, or sometimes even go, across the country, they start to count from Praça da Sé. That's 2 blocks from our location. So we are very happy with our location, for sure. And all right, so I see here we don't have much time. If you guys have your final questions, I think we can get 2 or 3 questions to finish up this live stream. Remember, if you haven't liked our live stream so far, please like our content. This is going to help other people find the content. Don't forget, we have a live stream scheduled for Sunday. Okay, so if you want to participate in our Sunday live stream, the only thing you need to do is to come to our channel, go to the live tab, and then you're going to see a notify me button under the date of Sunday. September Sunday is going to be the 15th. So we're talking about September 15th. We're going to have another live stream. I'm sure that once you think about the things we've been discussing today, you're going to have other interesting things to tell here in our live stream. Okay, now just taking a look here at one of our offline topics. This offline topic, would you either choose Rio de Janeiro or the northeast of the country? Like, where do I find the best beachy towns, right? So I think we do have a couple of videos comparing Rio de Janeiro state to the states in the northeast. We even have a video comparing Rio de Janeiro city to Fortaleza, and there is no winner per se, because they are so different, right? Like, I mean, Rio de Janeiro is in the south of the country, so even like the climate, like, I mean, the weather is going to be substantially different. In the northeast, you don't have a winter, right? Like, it's just like permanent summer. If you are in Fortaleza, you're going to have temperatures above the 80s, like throughout the year. And whenever temperature drops to like 70 Fahrenheit, like, people are going to say, well, I'm freezing, like 70 degrees, right? So that's going to be the weather for most of the northeast. Like Rio de Janeiro, because it's in the south, right? Like, it's just like above São Paulo. It does have a more well-defined seasons, right? So when it's summer, when it's winter. There is spring, there is autumn. So there is that. The weather is substantially different. Rio de Janeiro is also, of course, a world famous, right? Like, I mean, everybody knows about Rio. I like to say that Rio de Janeiro is part of the, like world-class cities. Whenever you think about, New York, London, Tokyo, Paris, you also should think about Rio, because I think they go side by side in terms of relevance in the world culture, and that doesn't happen to the Northeast, right? Like, so in the Northeast, you're gonna find smaller towns. Usually, like even Fortaleza, I don't know, maybe Fortaleza has 900,000 inhabitants, and Rio has 9 million, right? Like, so they're very different in size and access to convenience. In Rio de Janeiro, you can have access to pretty much anything you want. Like when you wanna go big time in luxury, in high-end things, you're gonna find it in Rio de Janeiro. This is more rare in the Northeast. So in the Northeast, you're gonna find a more like a laid-back style, and also as a consequence, things are gonna be more affordable, right? Unless you're going to Jericoacoara, which is like, even though it's in Ceará, it is a very secluded beach town, like, in the middle of nowhere. So to get things to that location is very difficult, and therefore this is going to impact on prices. But in general, as a rule, the cost of living in the northeast of Brazil is going to be lower than the cost of living in Rio de Janeiro. Okay, so you're going to need to pick your style. Rio de Janeiro, luxury city, all options. If you don't want to, go to a luxury neighborhood, there are options for you as well. Ranging from Rio de Janeiro downtown, to Recreio dos Bandeirantes, Barra da Tijuca, and more like to the west side of Rio de Janeiro. There are really nice communities with great homeowners associations, right? Now, for the Northeast, usually you don't find many communities. It's more like, either you're going to be in a building, and the building is going to be a homeowners association, or you're going to buy like a beach house, right? And it's very easy to find beach houses in the northeast of Brazil, even like beachfront. Of course, in the city of Rio de Janeiro, there are no beachfront houses. There are beachfront apartments and buildings. There are beachfront houses in other smaller cities around Rio de Janeiro, and I'm sure you heard about Búzios. There is Angra dos Reis, right? Two major names like in Rio de Janeiro for beach houses and beach towns. But I'm particularly, right? And then there is always this question, right? What do you like personally, right? And I actually spend most of my time in the northeast of Brazil, right? In the northeast of Brazil, and I do like it. I think it's more down to earth, like it's a more. I interact more with nature, okay, and it's just like something that I really enjoy, to be in the northeast, like, particularly when I am in Fortaleza. There are, like the fish markets in which you can buy the fish and have the fish that was, caught like early in the day. You can have the fish cooked like on the spot. So it's something amazing, right? Like to have food that fresh, food that was caught like a few hours ago, cooked for you in front of you and served for you to eat, by the beach, like, looking at the sea. Is just an amazing experience, and it's so affordable. Like, for foreign citizens, you could probably do that every single day. Imagine waking up, having an amazing breakfast, and then you're going to have a meal by the sea, eating like food that was caught a couple of hours ago. That's not for everyone, right? Like, that's for those lucky ones who dare to explore the Brazilian Northeast. But that's it. I appreciate everyone's participation. Don't forget to come back here on Sunday. On Sunday, we're going to be meeting at 3:30 p.m. Rio de Janeiro time. Good to see you, and you have a blessed rest of your day.